Today's video is a little bit different. It's going to be the first of what I hope will be a series of videos that I make on this channel that look into the different things around me in my life and in my local circle that interest me, with the aim of documenting them through the lens and the art of photography. And in today's video, I sat down with a friend of mine here in Cologne, fellow Irishman and lifelong musician, Gareth Houston.
My name's Gareth and I'm a freelance artist. I suppose that's the best way to sum it all up. I'm a classical musician, flute player, orchestral musician, soloist, music teacher, stadium tour guide, and podcaster.
Gareth's story is pretty fascinating. He comes from the somewhat crazy world of classical music and is currently transitioning from what was a devastating once-in-a-lifetime event of the COVID-19 pandemic onto a new way of looking at making a living as a modern-day musician. The experience of the pandemic has very much changed Gareth's viewpoint on the arts, creativity, making a living from creativity, and just learning to enjoy it all. So I met up with Gareth, we sat down, had a chat, and talked about his past experiences and his different perspectives on the life of a modern day creative.
I can't remember any part of my life where I didn't play the flute. I started at like 4 for the first time, started properly at around 6. For me, it's just there. It's everything, really.
Oh, there's Oscar Wilde himself. That's from Salome, the Oscar Wilde play. It's a nice way to get Ireland into it.
Everyone in my family has given the flute a lash at some point. We've all picked it up. My dad played it for one night, and then he gave up. But he still played it for one night. So I was brought into that at 4 years old. Give it a lash. I fucking hated it, apparently. Didn't want to do it. And then about 6 years old, when my mum and dad were working after school, we used to go to my grandparents, and my grandfather used to work in the steel mill, and then he'd come home and teach flute in the evenings. And I heard it one night and said, fuck, I'd love to give that a go and learn that. And then my granny was like, you did already give it a go and you hated it? And I was like, well, here, that was 2 years ago. Right. I was playing away, studying away, enjoying the flute, never really took it seriously. I think most of my motivation on the flute came from playing in a flute band, and the girl I fancied was in the senior section of the flute band, so you had to practice a lot and get promoted to that essentially. So I practiced purely for that motivation alone, and that was what carried my teenage years. And then when I got promoted up there, I sort of thought, fuck, do I really want to do this anymore? It's a lot of work. Until I had a head of music at my high school, this guy, Mr. Faulkner, he was the head of music at our school. He had such a passion for music. He enjoyed it. He was fun. He was cool. If it wasn't for him, I don't think I would have went on and studied it. And that sounds like he had like this huge, massive impact. But again, a lot of creative people can relate to this. It was a gentle nudge in the right direction, and you're just sort of playfully exploring what's going on with your creativity and your art. And you go, fuck it, we'll go see what's going on over there. And they just go, yep, you go that way. Just guide you along. Don't push you.
Flutes come in different materials. Now, the reason we play gold is not to be showy. It's not fancy. It's purely because gold vibrates at a different speed. So when you blow hot air against gold, because of the density of gold, it vibrates and gives a different sound. Gold is very tight as a metal. It's very dense, so it gives a very brilliant, colourful sound. Gold flutes are expensive as shit. Now mine, I'm very lucky, it's 5 carat gold, so it's actually more silver than there is gold. So the body is 5 carat gold where you blow against it. You see it's got that lovely champagne-y kind of colour. And then the keys are solid silver, because the keys don't vibrate, so they're not as important to have in gold. These were made about 30 years ago, so I picked it up second-hand in Paris. It cost me €10,000, which as a flute is cheap as fuck. It really is. No, but I spent my life savings on this, man. Like my family were saying, like my dad used to put 25 quid a month for me since I was born into an account. All of it went on this, because you're an artist, it's your craft, you need to have the instrument to go with it. It's the most important thing. It's the only thing I need is a good instrument. I'm in love with this flute.
I actually planned to study psychology. That was my main choice. I applied for both, and then I actually did get into music college for the Royal College of Music in Wales, and that was it. I sort of fell into that by accident as well. I thought, sure, why not? We'll give it a lash. I knew I wanted to do a postgraduate degree somewhere in flute performance. I had a girlfriend at the time who was French, and we went to spend the summer with her in Paris, and I thought, well, while I'm in Paris, it's the world capital for the flute, I'll take a flute lesson. I'll just email some teachers and say, listen, I'm here, do you mind giving me a lesson? And one of them actually said they had a spot in their class opening up in September for the postgraduate degree. I'd be welcome to take the spot if I wanted it. And I was like, fuck, that's like, it's like a few weeks away. I couldn't speak French. The study was entirely in French, but I had no plans at that point. So I thought, fuck it, why not? And that was it. I just sort of went to Paris, and that was purely through an accident and a bit of luck. So I went to the École Normale de Musique de Paris. It's a very fancy school in Paris. And I studied there for 3 years. And then that's when I came to Cologne after that. So I had the 3 years in Paris in between.
One thing that came up a lot when we were talking was this ability of Gareth's to just have a go, as he would say. I think that's like something that's often really undervalued when it comes to, I mean, I guess not just creative stuff, but everything. Just putting yourself out there, taking a chance, being a bit of a chancer. I see this a lot with Irish people because I think it's culturally a very big part of our character. Like having that little bit of boldness to just have a go at something, you know, trying it, chancing your arm, even if it's probably not going to work.
Do you know what I always put it down to be honest? I always thought this is what it was either being Irish, I think it's maybe a huge part of the Irish culture, or from Belfast, it's maybe one of the two. I know rebelliousness is a natural part of being Irish, and certainly in Belfast, I'm not going to that too much, but rebellion is a huge part of life and everything in Belfast, and anti-establishment. It's why the punk scene was so big in Belfast and things like that. So I wonder sometimes is it just my upbringing that you sort of go, fuck it, we'll give it a go. What's the worst that can happen? And like I say all these things, if they're all success stories, that the trail of chaos I have left behind in every single thing I've done creatively, like everything I've done right, I'd say I've fucked up at least 15 things to get there. I've made terrible decisions the whole way through, but I just go, fuck it, and you move on then. I think accepting the failure is a part of being creative. When you get over the fear of failure and you just go, fuck it, if I fail, you get so much more results.
Some of it's very fucking hard. But this one here's Daphnis and Chloe, that's my favourite solo. So that's by Maurice Ravel, French composer. In my opinion, the best flute solo ever written. It's a beautiful solo towards the end of the last movement. It's gorgeous. And then Bolero, yeah, so that's mainly what I'm practicing. And then everything else I practice tends to come through memory. Generally at this point, my scales and my studies and any Mozart concertos I'm doing and things like that, that tends to be up here.
Okay, so that brings us up to Corona.
Ah, fuck. Yeah, Corona. It was such an awful time for artists. Like, before Corona, I was doing all right. I was studying, I'd moved to Germany, I was doing a bit of freelancing. Germany's very well known for its freelance orchestral scene. There's a lot of music going on here. So you can make a good living here just freelancing. Between that and teaching and studying still a wee bit and learning my craft, it was all going well. Corona killed everything stone dead. I think some creative people were able to take their industries online and adapt them for the digital age. Classical music was not ready for that. Classical music never had the infrastructure ready to go digital. So orchestras collapsed. A lot of them haven't survived well since. Me personally, I had no more gigs. I had a great concert tour planned with a piano player on Beethoven's 250th birthday, which was that year. Obviously that stopped, and you don't get that again because Beethoven's only 250 once. Biggest solo thing I've ever done, just gone. That was it, gone. And after Corona, the company or the arts organization that had paid for it, they dissolved. Their funding went, and that's such a common story.
What, so you get that short with work?
Yeah, I can say it's Byron Tour in the back as well. So maybe I can't speak for all creatives, but I think most creative people frequently, I've certainly had it for my entire life, frequently will think, fuck this, I'm going to do something normal. I'm going to do a normal job. I'm just going to get paid for it. I'm going to do something proper. I do that once a week and I've done it regularly since I was about 17. I nearly did, and then teaching started to pick up a little bit. That was good. At least I'm still in the game. And I suppose the savior in one way was the job at Leverkusen. So the Bayer Leverkusen football team, they were hiring for a stadium tour guide, and I got that job, and I quit the job in the school to do Leverkusen. Leverkusen pays way less than the school job did. School jobs are very well paid. But I fucking loved the job. I loved working at Leverkusen. I'm still there now. I adore it. It's one of the best jobs I've ever done. It's so great to get away from the classical music world, to get away from the arts world. But also, you're a tour guide. There is a performative aspect to it as well. You're kind of putting on a show a little bit too. So I had the skills for it, but I love football. I was getting paid to talk shite about football. And then that generally helped my mental health and my creativity.
It's talked about a lot, but I think often it's either talked about in the wrong way or it's underappreciated. Sometimes to be able to enjoy something that you love to do, you have to be in a good place, a good headspace. I think to be able to enjoy almost everything, you have to be in a good headspace. But sometimes it's not very intuitive. And I thought this example in Gareth's story of him taking a lesser paying job so he could work in an industry that was not related to music, but is also something that he enjoyed, was kind of a good example of this. Sometimes we have to step away from what it is we want to do. We have to step back. Sometimes I think it's interesting how people, maybe they have to take a job that earns them more money so they don't have financial stress, or vice versa. You have to quit a job that you hate so you're not just constantly miserable. And getting yourself in that healthy headspace and looking after your mental health, I think that is something that's super important to making good art or good photography or whatever it is.
Once I'd settled down a little bit and thought, right, I've got students, I'm making an income, I've got Leverkusen for my happiness, I don't really need anything else now. What do I want to do? Suddenly that aspect of creativity, which is where it all comes from, is you have to create from a happy place. Suddenly I'm happy, I'm enjoying my job, I'm enjoying my life. I want a wee bit more, but I'm not doing it from this desperate kind of, fuck, I need to get this, otherwise I'm not going to be able to eat or my career's done. And then podcasting came about.
I think this idea came around after a couple of points, probably. Most great ideas do, but I designed the Inline G trading card, so all the guests that I've had on the podcast, they get their own trading cards. I'll show you a few of these here. But all the different guests I've had on get their own trading card with a couple of features. They're not for sale, just each guest will get their own one, and then I keep an extra copy for me. It's based off, obviously, Pokemon cards and Yu-Gi-Oh cards. So, yeah, same questions, old pictures. Some great ones in there. And I designed them all myself. I think they're fucking class.
For that's a common theme, I think, for most creative people, certainly for me throughout my life, is who the fuck wants to listen to me? Why would I do that? At some point you realize, well, everyone started off like that at some point, and honestly, you just give it a fucking go. I wrote one script for one episode, not a fucking clue what I was doing. I just had an idea in my head thinking, fuck, if I was 17 and I was still in music college, or 18, what kind of podcast would I have liked to heard?
Here we fucking go. Back to the podcast. Right. Dia Gwit, everyone. Kajima Tosh Shivan. Welcome back to episode number 51 of the Inline G Flute Podcast with me, your sexy host.
But I'll make an episode of that. So the idea was I wanted to make sure, first of all, it had a normal accent, not a fucking posh Oxford accent that is covered in classical music. I wanted to make sure you could swear in it, because classical musicians do fucking swear. You hear them all the time. They just don't say it on air. And also I wanted it to touch on whatever subjects you want. So like there was obviously a lot of abuse scandals in classical, well, not obviously, but there has been a lot of abuse scandals. And in every other industry they're talking about it, don't talk about it in classical music. A lot of the themes of certain composers' works, incredibly sexualized. We don't talk about that. The queer backgrounds and the minority backgrounds of a lot of composers, we don't talk about that. We leave that all out. You go, why the fuck? It's 2024. We can do this now. So classical music didn't do it, and I thought, that's what I would like to hear. I'll give it a lash and see where it goes. I think the turning point was a very famous flute player in America called Gary Shocker. He messaged me saying he'd seen the podcast and he wanted to be a guest. And the podcast never had intention of doing guests, but he brought it to me. And I went, okay, well, if you're asking me, I can't fucking say no then, can I? And I got him on. I got him to swear a little bit as well, and he really enjoyed that. I got to talk about some of the more deeper sides of classical music that people never talk about. And suddenly that episode went somewhere and people are watching and like, we like this. So I got more guests on, more things happened. So it never was like I'm going to do this, or I never had this huge burst of energy or confidence ever. It's just been, fuck it, we'll give it a go, and I'll post it online before I start thinking twice about it.
Something that I hear a lot is when people say that they're too shy to put their work out there, you know, that it comes natural to some people. I often think this is a mistake because I see it more as a skill. The ability to put your work out there and be vulnerable with something that you made and to show it off to people is a skill that you need to work on over time. And I think, sure, like all skills, it comes naturally to some people. To a lot of people, it doesn't. And most people are pretty bad at it when they start. I also thought it was interesting how Gareth spoke about like that it's also necessary. You can create for yourself, of course, like there's nothing wrong with that, and it's also very good in ways. But to be a professional and to be an artist, I think there is at least a little bit of necessity there, you know, to actually show it. The role of a performer or an artist or whatever it is to put their message out there and to try and impact other people with that message. And you can only do that by putting it out there. That comes with the vulnerability. It's an important and necessary step to it.
I think that's kind of your job, isn't it? Like, what's your role as an artist, really? Especially as me as a performer. You know, I don't compose music, I perform it. When I'm playing the flute, my job is Beethoven or Mozart or Bach or one of these lads has written this tune. There's an audience there who wants to hear the tune, and I want to hear it live. They need someone in the middle. That's my job. So you have to be there to perform. You can't hide it from the world. That is your job. That's what your role is. It's a skill in itself. It's never the reaction of the audience that matters. That's totally out of your control, and that's a general rule in art. It's a skill that you train yourself, that I'm going to put it out there. Doesn't matter what happens after that. It's opened up way more doors than would have been opened if I was just playing the flute. Reputation is the wrong word to use, maybe. I became more well known in the flute community through a podcast than I ever did as a player. It's its own thing. There's no judgment on it before. I do it entirely on my own terms, and nobody has that comparable basis. It's not like when you play the flute and they go, well, this I like it, I prefer the way they do that, or I prefer the way they interpret back. Or when I'm doing this, it's so unique because I'm the only person who swears and talks shite on the internet specifically about the flute and has the experience to come at it from a slightly more educated point of view. And it's a podcast as well. It's great. It's not TV. It's not radio. There's no like 3 questions and we're done, bang, out. You set up a couple of cameras and you just sit and chat to your favorite musicians, and I get to ask them the questions that I've wanted to ask them for years. That's probably the best bit of it, apart from what it gives me on my own creativity and my own self-worth and my own self-confidence, which has been incredible. The best thing is just meeting these flute players, having a bit of crack with them and saying, yeah, I did that. I've got an extensive private flute teaching studio, so I teach privately here and online. Teaching on my own terms is great. I'm working with a student, I love it. Podcasting, obviously, working at Leverkusen still, adore that, absolutely love it. Irish traditional music has become something I've added in. I started sessions, and after 2 years of playing in the sessions, just purely by accident, I had no intention of training myself as a trad player, no intention of practicing it. After 2 years of doing it regularly, I'm going, fuck, I'm actually not bad at this, and I'm making money off it now. I can start a trad group, and we can play as a band. And orchestral playing is something I'm going back to. Definitely fell out of love with it for a long time. I had no desire to go back on stage. It was the world, it was the colleagues, it was doing the podcast as well and talking about these topics. You realize how fucked up it is, and then you come back to it with in a healthy state, and you're looking at all these people and you're going, you're all fucking mad, right? Fuck you guys. But now I'm coming back to it with a bit more empathy and a bit more openness, and I'm looking forward to getting back into the orchestral world. I'm going to start throwing myself back into that over the next, hopefully very short period of time, actually. Everything that's happened post-corona has been, it's been some kind of thread I've pulled on, or some kind of alleyway I've went down, or some kind of curious about what's going on down there, and I've just followed along. And again, most of them have ended with dead ends, and they've been shite. The ones I haven't, I kept going along just purely because they were fun. I'd never had the intention of making any of these things part of my professional portfolio. And again, the whole time, once a week, I'm thinking, I get a job in fucking Lidl, get a proper job to pay for all this. It just so happened I got very lucky, and it all came together just purely by trusting my own creative instincts and having fun with it, having a laugh with it, enjoying it, being passionate about it, and seeing where it goes. So now it's all tied together in a nice way. Is there a balance between it all? Is there fuck? Will there ever be a balance? I highly doubt it. I don't know. Every week's fucking different. I don't know what I'll be doing in a year. Will I still be doing this? Will I be working in a little? I'm not really sure yet. It doesn't feel like this is all happening at once. It's weird to reflect on it all. All this has happened by accident, and now it's all together and forming one big coherent ball. But before that, it wasn't. I have no idea what the fuck it'll be next, but I'm enjoying the ride anyway.